What's up, guys? Here we are, continuing with the mental health awareness series. And today's guest you are going to absolutely love. She's a dear friend of mine. Her name is Elaine Duncan. She's a leader in the sobriety space. Let me see if I can bring her on here. For nonprofits, does development for different nonprofits and companies, involved with a ton of different projects. Um,
Hey,
hey, Elaine, so great to see you.
it's great to see you.
How are you?
I'm good. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday. You look wonderful. I was just sharing a little bit about your work and your background and all that you're up to. You're someone who is totally tapped in to a ton of different things. You're super duper well networked. You're one of the most well networked people I've ever met. And everything that you're involved in is about making people's lives better, about helping people, healing people, making the world better.
Thank you.
So thank you for doing all of that. So it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And you recently celebrated a big milestone. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty excited about it.
Okay, so tell us.
So on Monday, I had 20 years of sobriety. One
That's
day,
incredible.
one day at a time. But yeah, I was really excited about it.
Okay, so how did that even come to be? We don't normally get into sobriety because things are going well.
Yeah.
Um, so what was that journey like for you, even having to approach that process? And I would just want to say thank you all for being here. Good to see you guys. Hello, and again, congratulations, Elaine. 20 years
Thank
is a
you.
huge milestone. That's enormous.
Thank
So
you.
how did you get into that? What made you want to get sober? And so what was that sort of like the origin story?
Um, Thank you for asking me because I actually really, it's a privilege to share my story. I think that if more people shared their stories, it would give others permission to share theirs. And it was really interesting because when I came into, I'm a 12-step girl, and when I came into the rooms, it was a very different time, and people didn't talk about it, and it was kind of suggested that you don't talk about it, and there was a lot of stigma. Um, and now I think that we have so many people to thank, that are very open about their recovery. Russell Brand, Brene Brown, Glennon Doyle. I mean, and Rob Lowe just celebrated 30 years. He did a really great piece on that, and I think that it's made it okay for people to talk about. But, I grew up in a really unique family. I mean, my story. You're like my brother, and I love you, and you probably know me better than most people. Um, but I grew up in a really unique way, and there was a lot of childhood trauma, and but we on the outside looked like the perfect family, but on the
Mhm.
inside our electric was getting cut off and we didn't have food. you know my mom was like running around on my dad, and they've both passed now, so I feel like I can be really honest about that. And my dad was kind of like a codependent enabler, and we were kind of surviving. And
Mhm.
so I never really learned how to self-soothe. I didn't learn how to express my feelings in an appropriate and processed way. And so I reached out for other things, and it wasn't just drinking, it was drugs, it was titles, it was money, it was guys, it was whatever was going to make me feel better, right? And I think that's why people go to anything, really. I mean, they just want to feel good. And um and so I was like 28, and I was starting to make a lot of bad choices, and I had all the things. And I started working when I was 13, and bought my own car, paid for my own college. I was really, really, really wanting to, like, I also grew up in a very large family. I had 15 brothers and sisters. So, I wanted to stand out. I wanted to like be better.
Right.
And I was my
And
parents' only
you were
biological child.
actually,
So,
right.
what?
You were actually the only biological child of your parents. Is that right? All 15 of your brothers and sisters were
Yeah.
adopted. Wow.
So I never really fit into my own family. And I was the only Caucasian besides my parents. So I never really fit into my family, much less felt like I fit into the world. Right. So, so I worked really hard, and I tried to feel better because I was exhausted. And since it is mental health month, and I know that, that's one of the things that we're going to get into, I also suffered from anxiety and depression, and I just wanted it to stop. And so
at the time, so you mentioned that you said that you didn't learn at a young age how to self-soothe. Do you think that at the time, you're mentioning now that there was anxiety and other issues like that going on, were you aware of them? Were
sorry
you
about
aware
that.
of them,
I
or
had someone calling me.
That's okay. So when you said that when you were a kid, you had a hard time self-soothing, or you didn't know how to self-soothe, you didn't really learn that. And so later, when the anxiety and the mental health issues started to set in, and you started to self-medicate with drugs and alcohol and titles and money and guys, like you mentioned, was that something that were you aware that you had anxiety, or was all of this more like automatic, unconscious behavior?
No, I was aware, actually. And it has helped shaped a lot of my views around mental illness, because I was aware, and I would go to doctors, and I'd walk out 20 minutes later with a bunch of prescriptions. And I think that still happens a lot. And, the truth is, I just didn't have anybody in my life that I really felt like I could tell the truth, because I was so focused on being perfect.
Right.
I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be seen as perfect. I wanted to be smarter than everybody else and better than everyone else. And, so I just wanted to feel better. So I did. I mean, I can remember popping Xanax, walking down K Street, and then going to a bar and having a glass of Chardonnay, I mean, so, the truth is, I had a roommate that, was in recovery, and it's one of my closest friends to this day. In fact, I had a huge Zoom meeting the other night with like 60 people on it from all over the country, and he kicked us off, and he basically, I kind of had made some mistakes and not locked the doors or whatever, and he said, I can't live like this. So, I love you, but like, you need to either find another place to live, or you need to stop drinking. And my first thought was like, man, I gotta find another place to live, But then when I really kind of thought about it, and I connected with some friends, and the next day was my first meeting, and I was really fortunate, because what I thought I was gonna walk into was very different from what I walked into, and I actually knew people in the meeting, and so I had a community right away. And I think community is really important for mental illness, for addiction, we all need community, and we all need to feel loved. And I felt loved in the room.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's great. And so you said a couple interesting things. First of all, thank you for being just totally vulnerable with your story and everything. And congratulations again. 20 years is incredible.
Thank you.
And so in the beginning, you mentioned that the 12-step community and experience has changed quite a bit over the last 20 years. And at the beginning, you said that at the beginning of your experience with it, you said there was more of a stigma. And I also know that we've talked in the past about the 12 traditions. Anonymity is one of the traditions. And we're finding, like you mentioned, with Russell Brand, Glennon Doyle, Brene Brown, a lot of people are becoming more and more open about their relationship and experience with the 12-step program. What do you think about that? In relationship to the tradition of anonymity?
Well, when I talk about it, I say 12-step programs. I don't say whatever anonymous.
Okay.
And so I'm really careful about that. And I also, try to keep the tradition of, what you see here, what you hear here stays here. And I think that's really important. So that anonymity word, I think, is very important. But I personally, and I know a lot of other people feel this way, I think it's perfectly fine to say I participate in 12-step programs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, you brought up a good point. The anonymity, like I've been to a number of different 12-step program things. And for me, my relationship to it is the anonymity is really what you see and what you hear when you're there, like you're saying. And I find it very helpful. It was actually when people are very open and honest about it. It was actually at a lecture when someone mentioned that they had really been, they had really benefited from Codependence Anonymous. That was my first time, because that's what they said. That was my first time hearing about it. And that for me is the 12-step program that actually I found most helpful, because I haven't had a substance abuse problem, so that was, so I think that's really interesting. The anonymity part of it is really interesting, and it's interesting to hear your opinion on that as well.
But I want to say 12-step programs for me were the gateway to all these other types of healing. I mean, I had to kind of get sober to get my head. But 12-step programs did not help me necessarily work through all the childhood trauma that I had.
Okay, so that's super helpful. So I love that idea of looking at something as a gateway. Not everyone's going to even be drawn to 12 steps. Not everyone's going to be drawn to yoga, meditation, therapy, church, whatever it is. So whatever someone's drawn to, whatever that initial thing is, like for you, it was presented to you, like you said, through your roommate. So there is like that gateway. So for the listener, looking at what the gateway is, where you're at in your process. There are people who are listening who've done a ton of different self-development work. And there are people who, whether they've done work in the past or not, they might be really facing something, So what was that process like for you when you were, when your journey was expanding and taking you to other modalities?
Well, I got really interested in religion. And, started reading, a student of the Course in Miracles. I'm so excited to see that you have Marianne on Sunday. She actually, her books were a major influence in my life. Carolyn Miss, Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer. I mean, like so many of those, I'm a seeker. And then I started working with an amazing
So yeah, I definitely am familiar with Eckhart Tolle's work. Love Marianne.
Sorry, I had a battery issue. So I started working with an equus coach, and horses really taught me a lot about, if you haven't done it, like it's the most amazing thing in the world. And then I went to the Hoffman process, and that was a game changer for me. And so I know you have a lot of friends that have gone there. So
yeah, what is the Hoffman process?
It's a 7-day retreat in Northern California. A friend recommended it to me. I didn't know a whole lot about it when I went, but I trusted my friend, and I did some research. They partner with Harvard. It's a lot of neuroscience. It's experiential. It's like, a group of people that don't know each other. They don't know each other's last names. They don't know what anybody does. So it's a level playing field. And you work in a larger group and a smaller group and one-on-one with a teacher. And they have, in my opinion, some of the best trauma specialists in the world. And so Yeah,
So
I mean,
that was
it's amazing.
so that was one of the things that was a huge contributor to your breakthrough, the Hoffman process.
Yeah, I mean, what I learned was that, one of the main tenets with Hoffman is, that you are a quadrinity. You have an emotional self, an intellectual self, a spiritual self, and a body. And if those four things aren't on the same page, you're going to have some challenges. So
Mm-hmm.
what I learned was that my emotional self was still very young because my intellectual self had to kind of take the reins at at a young age because I had, for survival reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, when I would get triggered or something and I didn't really understand it, or, when I would have transference with someone or they would have it with me, I mean, that was my emotional child. I mean, a lot of people call it, it's all the same, I think, reacting.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end, you kind of come out, there's so many other pieces to it,
Right.
but at the end, you kind of, you come out a full person with your emotional self and your intellectual self, like shaking hands and saying, let's listen to our spiritual self and let them guide us a little bit. And
Right.
your body changes because our
Right.
bodies hold trauma. And there's a whole bunch of different conversations we can have about that, but everything from intergenerational trauma to, just being blocked.
Mm-hmm.
And you do a lot of things to unblock that stuff, and you see people transform in front of your face. It's wild.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was really very, very helpful. And
And
I've
so
gone back
that's
and done more work there. I love it.
right. And so that's just 1 week. And so I think that's something that's really good for people to like really realize is that you can have these powerful experiences, but you have to continue to integrate them. You can have a really powerful week, but you can go have a powerful week and then drop the ball after that. And that's something that I've been getting a couple different emails about. I'm seeing a question right now. There's two things I want to address. Let's address this question. The question says, how could I know if I have anxiety? So you and I were talking about that. I'm sure we could both answer that a couple different ways. How did you know that you actually had anxiety? You said that you knew, you were aware of the anxiety so much that you actually sought medical attention and you saw professionals for it. What was coming up and how did you know that it was anxiety?
I threw up. Um, I was forgetful. I couldn't
Okay.
sleep. Um, I was like constantly up in my head. And I think another thing is I'm a pretty creative person,
Mm-hmm.
and creative people kind of get up in their head. Um, and I had a lot of fear. I mean, I didn't have a safety net. If I didn't make it, I would have myself like living on the street. I mean, it was
So,
even like
so these
in
are
my
these are like
head.
different these are like different symptoms you're describing.
Yeah.
And so were these interrupting your life? Like you said, you threw up. Would you throw up in like a high pressure situation, or would you throw up in a situation that you should normally be able to handle? Like when were these symptoms demonstrating?
Well, I also felt everything. I mean, I'm a little bit empathy, and so I would like pick up other people's stuff, and if they had anxiety, then that would give me anxiety, and so I think everyone experiences it different, um, but I used to get sick, in the morning because I was just thinking about my day and was I going to be perfect, and I wasn't pregnant. I've never been pregnant, so it wasn't. It was nerves. I
Mm-hmm.
used to get hives, um, when I would feel stress.
Yeah, and I think
But
I think that you just said something that's really good. So whoever asked that question, thanks for asking. Quick shout out, hi everybody, thanks for being here. Also,
and I see some of my Hoffman friends coming in, so I just want to say thank you. I love you, and I see you.
yeah, so okay, beautiful, love you guys. Hey, I got to do the Hoffman process sometime. I would love to. Okay, so
I
anxiety.
don't work for them. I don't work for them.
Yeah, so anxiety is usually about the future. So like you said, you would feel it in the morning thinking about your day. So I think to answer that person's question, I think it's an excessive preoccupation with the future, and like Elaine was saying, that there's different symptoms you can have. Um, it could be nausea, it could be high blood pressure, it could be overthinking, but it is typically characterized with an over preoccupation with the future. Anxiety is. They say anxiety is a preoccupation with the future, and depression is preoccupation with the past. So that may not always be clinically accurate, but that's sort of like a rule of thumb that I've found to essentially
I
play
think
out.
that's true. I think there's a lot of power being in the present, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I've worked with a number of therapists over the years. That was why I love the Equus work, because when you are just absolutely present with an animal, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. So Elaine and I went on a trip to Montana to a friend named Crystal's farm out there. And Crystal, I think, is actually on. So hi.
Crystal is like my sister.
Yeah, I saw her pop.
Crystal.
So the experience there, that was my first time riding horses in a really long time, and I'll say I definitely experienced it. We didn't even go through an elaborate equus training, and so for me, that brings up something that's interesting for me. Is I've never had a real serious substance abuse problem. I've overdone it in the ways that make sense in my reality, I've never really been like a drugs or alcohol person exactly, but more like overeating has been really tricky, and so we find like the ways that we overdo it, and then, we navigate it. But I think that what's interesting is, even though I didn't work with an Equus coach while we were together in Montana, just having my mind open because of some of the things that you said about being with animals, and just sort of having the thought in my mind about trauma healing and connecting to animals. I had a very therapeutic experience just from getting to know the horses and stuff. So there's something really powerful, I think, about just trying new things and just being open to trying new things and experiencing things. And I have to admit, I was a little nervous to get up on a horse. I was like, oh, that's a big, wide open field right there. If I get on that horse.
Great. You did great. And you won't share this, but you not only rode a horse, you like drove a Pioneer like wagon led by two huge Clydesdale looking, and Crystal's probably laughing at me right now because I can't remember the breed, but I mean, you were like,
yeah, that was really, it was so therapeutic though, just to oh, there's Crystal. Hey, Crystal. Just to try, just to be open to it, and so that's something that I think that we could encourage people, is like, maybe you're not ready for a 7-day retreat, that's
without your phone.
without your phone, that's costly, there's a lot of different things that that are really helpful that cost a lot of money, and so I think something that's really good for our mental health is just being really open, being open to trying things. And even though you were self-medicating through drugs and alcohol, I want to commend you on just being even receptive to your roommate when your roommate said, I can't live like this, you got to get sober. What you said surprised me. I didn't want to interrupt you, but what you said surprised me. The very next day you went to a 12-step meeting. The next day is what you said, and that is incredible. That's incredible. There's a lot of people, I worked in Hollywood. I worked with celebrities and models and, on the red carpet and everything. And there were people that needed to go to a 12-step meeting or needed to figure something out about their substance abuse problem. And they were told it left and right for years, never having gone to any meetings, and definitely never being as proactive. and at the beginning of that process for you, because 20 years can, for someone that might, might be smoking a lot of weed or drinking a lot or doing something that's like, kind of like unhealthy for them, that's crossing the line. Maybe they think, hey, this isn't really good for me. I've got to figure this out. 20 years can be really intimidating, So towards the beginning, did you feel, maybe did you feel is the wrong word, maybe the wrong question. How was it for you? Were you able to get sober right away? Or did you feel like there were different like periods of like relapsing and that kind of thing that came up for you? Off the wagon.
To be fair, I lived in a really nice brownstone on Corcoran Street in DuPont Circle, and I didn't want to leave. so that was, but I had thought about it many times. I mean, it was only a matter of time. I got pulled over all the time. I just always was able to get out of it. And, there's a saying like, people that, don't think they're an alcoholic, don't just show up at a 12-step meeting. If you think you have a problem, you probably do. And I knew that I was drinking 2 bottles of wine every night. I knew that, it was kind of like, it wasn't like, maybe I should check this out. I mean, it was real.
Right.
And I forgot your question.
I was just asking about, the expression is falling off the wagon,
Yeah. I lost both of my parents in recovery. I got divorced in recovery. I moved to 4 different cities in recovery. I did suffer from depression. And there were times when I had some really, really low lows, but I say this like with total humility and gratitude. I was smart enough to know that drinking was only going to make it worse. And I had this community that supported me. And I really believe that community is a very, very important part of any recovery. And, having real friends that know you and can talk to you and be supportive. And so I had that, and I feel very grateful that I still do.
Mm-hmm. And so even if someone maybe doesn't have a substance abuse problem, but maybe they're just simply cultivating their own mental wellness, they're listening, maybe they don't have any kind of mental health illness diagnosis, but maybe they're just wanting to cultivate mental wellness. There's a lot of collective challenges going on right now. There's a lot of collective anxiety. Even if people aren't feeling a ton of it personally, it's in the collective. And they just want to cultivate mental wellness, maybe even as like a preemptive effort. What would be the practices or the tools or the modalities that you might recommend people check out?
Well, I live in Denver, Colorado. There's a lot of wide open spaces here. So, I love being in nature. I love being outside. You actually were one of the people that really got me meditating. Your first book, I bought like 10 copies of it. And I bought a few lately too, since I saw you a few months ago in LA. And that actually got me into transcendental meditation. I took the classes and learned how it works and all that. So I do meditate every day. I'm really fortunate to have to be married to my favorite person, and we read together every morning, and then we meditate before he leaves the house. I work from home, so my life has not been that different through this. And by the way, I'm really excited about your new book. I've bought a couple copies for all of my family members.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book, because we were talking about the power of sharing our stories, and you're actually in the process of writing some of the trickiest challenges of your life in memoir form. So what's that process been like for you?
It has been a process, overachiever that I am. I was like, I will have this thing knocked out in a year. And that has not been how it's worked. I go and look back at my very early writing, and I was very angry still. I started writing 2 months after my mother passed away. And so I really had to kind of process my grief totally different way than my father, who I had a really great relationship with. And I had to work on that anger. And I think forgiveness is, compassion and forgiveness is like everything. And I held on to some grudges my whole entire life against that poor woman. And now I can really see that, like, she did the best she could with the tools she had. And it is something that I still work on. I'm not going to lie about it. I mean, I don't have many resentments. But forgiving my mother and my father for when I was a kid, have really, it's almost like opened it up for me. And now I feel like I'm like channeling it, but I had to go through that process. And sometimes it was hard. I mean, there's some spiritual experiences that happened. And I remember talking to you about it, and you're like, it has to go in the book. And I was like, people are going to think I'm crazy. So another piece is like not caring what people think. And that was a big pattern for me to have to work on, because I cared a lot. And I always used to say, I don't care what people think. But the truth is, I cared a lot. And if I really show you who I am, are you going to like me? And I think that's a really human thing. But I mean, you have been one of my biggest like supports in writing this book. And I appreciate and love you so much for that.
Well, I can't wait to read it. And I know it's going to be so helpful for so many different people and super insightful. And I remember when we were talking about it, and I don't remember how it came through, but it was earlier in the process. And you shared that, you basically shared that there was still a lot of anger. And I think that that's so important, when we're writing something, when we're sharing our story. This is something that Megan Monahan and I were talking about. When we're sharing our story, it's to be helpful. We're not processing it, Writing the book is a process, and you're processing it, and a lot of those things maybe you haven't even told anybody, haven't even said out loud to another person ever, let alone, make an effort to put into a published book. But I remember, and I had never said this before, it just came out while we were talking. And I said, well, you're a queen. You're not an angry peasant girl. Do you remember that?
I do remember that. What you said was Lainey. And a lot of people call me Lainey. That was what I went. And the book is called Finding Lainey. Yeah. You said, this book needs to be written by a queen, not a peasant girl. You need to work on that anger. Because I was very honest with you about some of the challenges that I was having,
right,
with the way that my mother died and how our relationship was when she died. And yeah, you did say that to me, and you still say that to me, and I love it.
The way you're saying it makes me sound like I was like a little more firm about it than I realized. But
no, you said it in a very loving way. You were like, this book needs to be written by a queen. You're a queen. Don't be a peasant girl. So, I
think that's so.
And it influenced me. It did.
Yeah, well, I think that really matters. Like you said, when you went back and you read the earlier things, like how many times, every time you mentioned Marianne Williamson, I've heard her talk about a return to love, and she made a joke about how it should have been called A Course in Writing, because she kept rewriting and rewriting and rewriting, and I think that that's really, really indicative of like how seriously you're taking the depth of your spiritual journey, that you're looking at it and saying, what, there's a lot of anger still in that, and that's not really cool. That's not where I want to be in this, and I've always loved the 12-step programs. I remember in high school, I was just so fascinated by what it was, or what they were, I guess. And when I read 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, and I remember really loving just sort of the general approach to the 12 steps. I was like, everybody should know the 12 steps.
It's a great blueprint. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great blueprint. It's a great template, and that first step is the way I see it. Let me know if this resonates for you. I see that first step as just honesty. just being totally, just acknowledging the reality. It's like being honest in the present moment. Um, and it's like the first step in my mind is get real about what's going on right now. Acknowledge the reality of what's going on right now. And I always say in meditation, that's what you want to do. You want to, if you're going to be an excellent chess player, you're going to stop. You're not going to wish the chessboard was different. You're going to look at the chessboard. You're going to look at the pieces. You're going to tune into what's right there on the board right now, and then make a move. Yeah. You know, no worries about the 2 moves ago. No anxieties about what someone else might happen, or another game that you played, or something like that. Not wishing that the board was different, or if you had more, whatever, but just really getting real about the reality of what is, that which is right. Actually true.
I got a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a problem. Yeah. And that's what it is. It's like, look, I've got a problem. And I think that is, from a neuroscience perspective, so powerful. You have to, the brain, the neurons and the neural pathways, like the message has to make it in there. This is actually not cool. This is a problem, you know? And I think that even if we don't have, I sometimes say we can choose our rock bottom. You know, you don't have to wait for the rock bottom to choose you. You know, you can say, look, I'm not really cool. For me, the example I'm going to use, my drug of choice has always been sugar. My drug of choice.
Well, your mom makes chocolate. I mean, my gosh.
I know. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, my mom's like a gourmet chocolatier. So I had no, I didn't stand a chance against the sugar. But when I started the quarantine, I went to my mom's place, went to my parents' place, and I started to eat like I was on vacation. And then 1 week turned into 2, and 2 weeks turned into 4, and 4 weeks turned into 6. And I was like, this is not ending anytime soon. My mom said, I said, oh, none of my clothes fit me anymore. I'm gaining all this weight. And my mom said, well, you know, most of the stores are closed, but you could go, you know, to Target and maybe get some clothes. I was like, I am not buying clothes to adjust to the weight I've gained.
Right.
And I chose my rock bottom right there. And my friend Just Made Keto was commenting, she makes like these amazing sugar-free things, you know? And so I found...
Slippery slope, yeah.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. I found, you know, the way I can navigate that is by finding, you know, I like sweets. How can I do it in a healthy way? How can I have sweets without sugar in them? How can I eat reasonable quantities of them, you know? And it's like workshopping it, you know? And I think that all of us have problems and all of us have challenges, you know? And it's like
part of the journey, right? I mean,
right. So workshop it. We can all do it.
Yeah.
You know, and we do sometimes need help. Like, look, if it weren't for Just Made Keto, I don't know if I would be able to be sugar-free, really, you know? If it weren't for companies like Just Made Keto or Lakanto, or even my mom she does now have at her chocolate shop a line of sugar-free chocolates, yeah. You know, that yeah. I can eat a few of without, you know, gaining a bunch of weight, you know.
You're beautiful, Ben Decker.
You know, it's just about taking good care of ourselves, yeah. You know, and I always feel comfortable with how I look, even if I'm gaining weight. It's more about that being a sign that I'm actually not taking care of myself, you know. And if the body is not being taken care of, like you said, from in the Hoffman process, we're a quadrinity. We have the 4 aspects of ourselves, the 4 layers or the 4 selves, you know. If one of them's lagging, that means the whole system's going to experience a sense of off balance, you know. And so for me, that body thing meant, you know what, I've got to cut out sugar. You know, I've got to.
I think your body does tell you. There's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score. I can never pronounce the guy's name because he's Dutch and I always mess it up. So I don't even want to disrespect him by trying to say it. But our body tells us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's with food and it's with behavior and it's with relationships. Like we know when something doesn't feel right. And you know, we don't listen to that.
That actually reminds me of another really good book that's on trauma by Gabor Mate.
Oh, love him. He's so smart.
Incredible. What a great guy. And his daughter is amazing too. Hannah Mate, she's amazing. When the Body Says No is the title of his book. One of his many books, but that's When the Body Says No.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bessel van der Kolk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Why can't I say that? I don't know why. I know that it's Bessel, but the van der Kolk part like always screws me up, and I didn't want to sound like an idiot.
Yeah, thank you.
Because I like to be perfect.
Yeah, but yeah, and you already are perfect. We're just perfect. Well, the time has totally flown by. I just want to thank you so much for your time and congratulate you again on 20 years of sobriety.
Thank you.
That's huge.
Thank you.
And that really is, you know, it's 20 years of a journey where you're really taking yourself seriously, you know, taking your life seriously.
And I'm only halfway there. I mean, I've got a whole nother half to live. So I'm just,
you've got plenty of life ahead of you. That's for sure. Yeah. You know,
I appreciate this opportunity, Ben, and thank you for inviting me to have a conversation with you. And I love you, and I hope to see you again really soon. I want you to come to Denver.
So guys, yeah, definitely. I would love to come to Denver. Guys, follow Elaine T. Duncan. Follow her, tune in with all the different things that she shares. She shares really, really great stuff, really, really wise content.
I just got on Instagram like not too long ago.
Yeah, so go follow her. We got to boost her followers up. Get over there, get in on it, link in. She's part of the crew. She's part of the community. So let's welcome her to Instagram.
Thank you.
And keep sharing beautiful stuff. You know, I definitely see what you share, and I really, really love and appreciate it. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Take care, Elaine.